Well, Martin, it's a pleasure to meet you, and thanks. Welcome to the Right Stuff, and thanks for coming to visit us.
It's my pleasure, John.
Thank you very much. So we might start with tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspires you to write.
Yeah, I grew up in Kildare town and joined the army when I was 23. Seems a long time ago now, and I spent 21 years in the army. I loved soccer and I used to love athletics, but I always had an interest in writing and in reading in particular. And when I couldn't, I suppose, engage with the soccer as much as I would like to have done, I started to write short stories and enjoyed writing them. I used to write for Woman's Way, Ireland's Own, and then I started to kind of have my own style, and I entered the Hennessy Awards and I was shortlisted twice there for awards, and then won the Francis McManus and with BBC. So I was writing short stories and having a measure of success with them, but enjoying the process, enjoying the whole process, and it was interesting to receive a few bob for it as well. So some people, not a whole lot, but you were getting paid for it, and that was kind of an incentive to go as well with it. Some sort of encouragement. I had never harboured any ambition to write a novel, and I came back from Lebanon and we had tried to push a collection of short stories and no one was interested in them, you know. So I wrote a novel, and that was entitled Us, and that won the John B Keane Award, the Independent Award, and I was shortlisted for the Irish Fiction Award, and a lovely experience meeting John B Keane there. And I remember being brought down to being brought outside to meet him, have a photograph taken with him, and he just said, "Don't tell me," but you've won the bursary, which was, you know, which I didn't realise what it was, but at the time, and that was a great boost, you know. And I met him the following morning for coffee, and so it kind of progressed after that. And my second novel was After Kafra, and that was about a guy suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome, and RTE were going to broadcast, you know, make a documentary, or a drama documentary out of that, but it didn't come about, you know. So the third book then was picked up by Simon Hughes in the UK, and a great experience there working with Tim Binding, who was Salman Rushdie's editor, and it was IMPAC nominated, that book. So that was nice. So I've always had it's been like a kind of I suppose a circle. Your ups and you have your downs with it, but I enjoy it. It's something that I think it's you know, you have to have some passion in life apart from the pursuit of money, and because I think when I give writing classes, I tell people that's not what they should write for. You have to want, you are either a writer or you're not a writer. You do hope, of course, that you make enough money to keep a living at it, that you can buy the time to write. You know, so that's so the desire was always there. Where it came from, I think, I don't know. It's probably in the background, some of the back generations, but I think everyone has a story in them to tell. And I've seen a lot happen over the 30 years I've been writing. I've had 8 books out now, and stage play, radio plays. So I've done parts of novels and a lot of other stuff, and there's always an element of enjoyment in it. But I never really had any expectations, and I always take a small pleasure no matter what I have published. It's just nice to see it, you know, because the day you lose, that's the day you give up, you know. But I enjoy reading as well.
Maybe could you tell me a little bit about the writers that you read, maybe that got you, inspired you in the beginning, or is there current writers that you think are really worthwhile reading?
I would have started reading the classics, Black Beauty, Robinson Crusoe, you know, Swiss Family Robinson. So and then a lot of I suppose Tell Me Why magazines and Look and Learn and all that. So no matter what it was I read, I don't have any particularly favourite writer, because I feel that their works vary. You know, so what's very good, you know, then you lose interest. For example, Roddy Dial now, I loved his commitments and all that, but A Star Called Henry, I wasn't too impressed by it, you know. Maybe because of a shift in style and that he was trying something new. Sebastian Barry, quite like his work. I like 2 of his novels. Colin McCann, Dancer, I thought was brilliant. I couldn't get into Zoe. People are raving about Let the Great World Spin. I couldn't get into it. Twice I tried to. And that's a worry as well, because you hear people saying to you, this is very, very good, and you're coming to it and you're not that impressed by it. you know, you have to, you're kind of worried about the whole, you know, we're not getting this, is there something wrong with me, or is it just a personal taste? And then you realise, well, that's exactly what it is. It's a personal taste. And, you know, but you do, when you're writing, you're doing a bit of work, and you say, well, why am I getting this? I like Donald Ryan's first book, The Spinning Heart. I haven't got around to his second. Kevin Barry, I think, is bringing the short story new places. And Philippa Kelly, Claire Keegan. So I would have read them all. And you read them with an eye to enjoying reading. But you also read them with an eye to studying the techniques, because they're readers themselves. So whatever work they're reading is influencing their work. So if you read it with a discerning eye, you know, you learn as well as enjoy, you know. And
do you think, in a way, being a writer can in some senses take the pleasure out of reading, because you always have that critical eye, or is that a problem as such?
It can be a problem for some writers, and I remember talking to Jamie O'Neill, and he never reads anything when he's writing because he's afraid that he didn't say this, but contaminate his work. And I think that's why it would be the same. If I'm writing a novel, for instance, I don't read. Because you don't want to, and you're that wrapped up in what you're doing yourself. So you don't want to be influenced, you know. Plagiarize, you know, or plagiarize.
Kind of their style might creep in, or something. Something might happen.
And you don't want that to happen. And it's you know, as I said, there are rules and no rules in the whole game of creative writing. You have to think inside and outside the box with it, you know. The whole scene is changing. It's evolving now as we speak. The language itself is evolving when you have texts, you know, and you know, there will be short stories with a book published, I think, in text language. So I think, and then we have shops closing down. You know, there's bookshops have to sell other things in order to survive. People are not buying books. Claire Keegan told me, says that there's too many books being published. But I'm just of the opinion that there's not enough people buying them, which is a different way of looking at it. So that would be my influence. So I would have enjoyed a lot of reading. I would have read widely, different writers, but without having a particular one.
So I was interested to know where your own view on your own style now and how it's evolved, maybe, or what do you have that kind of view of it yourself? Can you?
I let the characters dictate.
Okay.
I try to let them pull the story along, and I think that's my work would be character driven, and. You know, you have to try and put yourself in the character's shoes and look out through his or her eyes, and basically that's just, I don't really consciously have a style. David Marcus said I had a very adaptable style, and I think he meant I could copy anyone. So, you know, but I think no, I've no style. The characters dictate, and they dictate the style. The latest book, Valley the Peacock Angel, would, I suppose, you probably think it was written by. It was translated, perhaps. The style is sparse, but the language is sparse. And I the type of writing I prefer, and I like Magnus Mills. He wrote a great novel many years ago called The Restraint of the Beast, and it's a beautiful written book. Month in the Country by A.L. Carr is a fabulous book as well. So I like the idea of writing a sentence, but it carrying a lot of weight. Yeah, people can read between, and you're giving the reader some work to do, and something to walk away with. You know, the book is going to, I suppose, if you have nothing to keep you awake at night, this will do it.
Right.
You know. So that's no particular style. So I just let the characters dictate, because they have to really, especially if you're writing short stories, and your characters can't always be the same. Their style can't always be the same. You know, so the character will dictate if I'm going to write in the first person, third person, or the second person. Yeah, whichever I feel comfortable with, that the character feels comfortable with. Yeah.
And in terms of, say, when a story begins, I'm interested to know about, you know, when does that spark begin for you? How does it start? You know, a short story. How do you know you're going to have a short story rather than a novel? And
you don't really, but a short story, you see. This latest book, Valley the Peacock Angel, that started out as a short story. Most of my novels actually do start out as short stories, and the characters in them then say, "We're not finished with you yet. You know, you have to go on a bit." For example, the one I glow of the day was about the Curragh Wren women back in Victorian times, and that was a fascinating story, real life story. So I wrote a novel, a stage play, and a radio play, and So you can get the characters more or less tell you when they're finished with you, not the other way around.
Yeah.
This Valley the Peacock Angel, about the shepherd boy watching his family, that just grew again. They said, what if he met someone, an Iraqi major, for example, who was deserting the Iraqi army, a German philanthropist who happens to watch, he's a television documentary maker, and he sees his grandfather in a Nazi war camp, concentration camp, and he looks like him. But more worryingly for him, he has no empathy, no sympathy whatsoever for the Jews, or or what his countrymen did, what he's So that's the fact that he worries about it, and is concerned about it, means that there is something there. So you try and explore the human psyche, and also the other element as well. That the things we can't explain away.
Right.
They are there, but So.
And could you talk a little bit maybe about the process, like how you start with stories, and do you map out a story? Do you have an ending before you begin, or do you simply have a character and the character wants to speak? Is that how you
the character comes, and then you deal with the story. But you try with a short story, there's no preamble.
Okay.
With a novel nowadays, there's no preamble. You just kick in from the word go. It's like the sprint, and you take it forward from that point. Backstory, dialogue, and all of that then falls into place. So you try to drive the story forward without having too much backstory. That's the way I would try to.
Right.
It's something you can lapse into, where you have a very, very good start to a story, and then all of a sudden you're gone back into the backstory, and you could be 3 or 4 pages in, and you say, it's not right. If I don't, most of those stories in the Mango War, as I said, were competition stories, restricted to a certain wordage, and in a way that's not good for a writer, because if he's thinking wordage, he's taking his mind off what he should be doing, and that is the natural exploration of this story. And he's, but I do recommend the writers do that, because it teaches you word appreciation. You bear down in your writing a little. I would be a page and a half in. If I didn't see the ending of the story at that point, I know I have a bit of a problem.
Right.
Yeah. So it's mainly the characters, but you write for the pleasure of it, and you write to tease out your characters and see what they're like inside. And they're composite characters. No, I don't take anyone off the street and put them into it, as much as I would sometimes like to, especially the ones that annoy me, But they're all composite characters.
Okay. And you mentioned writing competitions there.
Yeah.
Like, there seems to be a huge amount of them nowadays, particularly for short stories.
Yeah.
And I've been, in the kind of general discussion around that world, the literary world tends to talk about stories or competitions being very important for emerging writers and kind of established writers to keep their work out there. And how important do you think competitions are for writers these days?
It's lovely to win one, apart from the financial aspect of it. And they are important, I think, but they shouldn't be a deterrent to someone who has entered competitions and hasn't been successful in them. I know very many writers, very, very good writers, like Claire Keegan, and a couple of others that I mentioned, didn't win Hennessy Awards, and yet they're fantastic short story, and that her book, Foster, is beautifully written. And Francis McManus. You don't know where your story is going. You would like to think that the cream rises to the top all the time, but life isn't fair, and the writing game isn't fair either. So you don't know who's going to pick up your story and read it. If I'm a 56-year-old, so I'm writing a story maybe from a 53-year-old, and someone picks up that story and reads it, that's only 23, 26, you would like to think that the quality of the writing would go in through, but not necessarily so, because short story writing is very subjective. And I think if you reach the last 10 in any short story competition, the judges have a hard decision then to make, and it has to come down with gut instinct and their personal taste. I felt that I've won competitions where I didn't expect to win, and I've lost them where I thought I had a chance. So you can never tell. But I do think if you're shortlisted, you're in the mix. So I wouldn't, because I said before, like creative writing, you can't think inside and outside the box. So there's no formula. You might never win a competition in your life, but if you're writing, you're reading, and you get a light bulb moment, then you're in place to write whatever you want to write, and that will bring you to success. And by success, I mean you've written a book, you're happy with it, you feel that you've given it your all, and then what happens after that. When I'm teaching creative writing, the blank page is a challenge, and that's a success when that's filled. Okay, and that's have no expectations, because if you have expectations of writing or anything else, you're going to end up bitter and disillusioned if this is not going to. Okay, don't be precious with your work as well, is what I would tell people as well. It changes. If you write a novel or short story and you put it away, it's going to change next time you go to it.
True.
You're going to say, I didn't write that. I know how that comma shouldn't be there. Just and you'll be surprised at what mistakes are there. So, in enjoyment, and how you have to have a compulsion to write as well. But look at everything you do as a small success, and then in the competitions, just send it and forget about it.
Yeah.
If I enter a competition, I have to be very careful, because I forget what I've entered. So it comes around the following year and I heard nothing. I say, what did I enter that? Because it's not that I don't care. It's just I put it to the back of my mind and I'm working on something else. I
suppose the danger there is you might send off again to the same one.
And probably win. You don't know.
Yeah,
that's the beauty of the game. This is why publishers take a chance on me, and writers like me to have maybe 12 horses going into the starting stalls. The favourite doesn't always win. And some terribly written books have become famous and the writers become wealthy, and that's the beauty of the game that we're in.
And in terms of, I've read lots of authors saying that to write a short story is the most challenging rather than even a novel. And would you agree with that?
A short story, you can't make mistakes. Every word has to count. With a novel you can get away with it, because obviously it's longer. You have time to develop your characters fully. You have time to develop a situation fully. You have time to play around. It's a big park, so it's a full-size soccer pitch. Okay. The run is 5-a-side, and make one mistake in the 5-a-side and your team is down. So that's what it is. Very challenging. And what is a short story? It can be 1,500 words, could be 10,000, and every one of those words has to really count. And when it comes down to, I suppose, the finishing stages of a competition, it might be the misplaced comma, a wrong dash that makes
small
difference.
minor thing.
Small thing. It would be very, very difficult.
And what are your thoughts on, say, new styles that are becoming popular, like flash fiction? Would you have any thoughts on that at all, or what's your own view on it?
Anything that gets keep people writing, and anything that gets people reading, I'm in favour of generally, and I think that's great. But flash fiction has been around before. This is to call it as if it's a modern take. It's absolutely not. It's like the Lewis. People think that's brand new. It's a tram. And that's so it's nothing new. So I think I think it's good, and I think when I tell people about the short stories and I'm talking to them about it, it teaches word appreciation. And by that I mean the strength of a word, the power of the word, the power of the one, the single sentence. That's what you're looking for. But if you can leave a trail, like a comet trail, at the end of one sentence, and people are thinking on that one, there are other strands, there are avenues to explore with that, just that single sentence. And that's the type of writing that I like to read. You don't get to it too often, but it is there. 1988. Unwilling to face into the biting cold, he had delayed in bed until he could no longer tolerate his mother's shrill voice. There was a certain sharpness to it that he would not dare to bring her beyond, and now she was close to the summit of her temper. He dressed in a hurry and called out to let her know that he was coming. She called him the laziest of boys, and his sisters said he was a lizard face for disturbing the quiet in the home. His grandmother smiled. She was deaf, and he thought she enjoyed being that way, so she could hear nothing of the shouts and threats or any of his father's loud snoring. Mother said he liked to snore because he knew it upset her and kept her awake. He hadn't always snored. It started when he put on the belly and began to drink too much arrack. The stupid man, she called him, but not in a bad way. Well, he thought, at least not when her mother-in-law was around. An imperceptible breeze slipped off the flanks of the snow-covered Zagros mountains, the foothills of which tapered to merge with the town's cemetery road. He rode the bay mule his mother would bring back down the mountain. Wickerwork panniers, carrying kindling to light the evening fire, logs, lumps of charcoal, a sharpened machete, fresh pita bread, beans, tea leaf, sugar, and some toffee sweets given to him by his grandmother. He was 15, Kurdish, dark-haired, green-eyed, thin and short for his age. Cotker Amedi, called after an uncle on his mother's side, whom he had never seen, who lived only in photographs and the occasional spoken memory.
I'm very interested in hearing about your own routine and how you approach your writing day. How does that work for you?
If I'm writing a novel, I try to get up at 5, half 5 in the morning and write for 2 hours.
Okay.
And maybe tidy it up then or revise it in the evening. That's a process that lasts about 70 days. Yeah. So depending on when I start, there's going to be a lot of arguments if I'm going to miss birthdays and all this sort of stuff. Because I don't stop. I think it's when you start, you have to continue with it, because what you don't want is to drop a link. And the first draft is about 70 to 80 days.
Right.
There are times when I had no intention of writing a novel and ended up writing one. And so you'd be wore out, but generally 5. Now, there's no routine perfect. And routine is probably the enemy of creativity. So I try to vary it, but generally I try to go up in the morning before the day pollutes your mind, before before the day runs away with itself, before other concerns come in. And if you're going to go to work and this, that, and the so the morning is the best time, I think, to write. But people have different routines. Yeah.
And how did you come to that process? Was that a kind of evolution that? Or did you begin in that way when you started your first novel?
Well, I did. It was kind of a natural, because I was working at the time. I was in the army, and so I had to get up in the morning and work. I had a 9 to 4 routine. There was times 9 to 4, 24-hour duty, for example. I'd be back, I had a couple of hours sleep, and then I'd write a bit, I tried to write 1,000 words a day, so if that took me 2 hours, fine. It took me an hour, fine. It took me 3 hours, then. So that's where I get the 70 days from. I try to write 1,000 words a day, and I always try and leave it as I have to pick up the threads again. There's something interesting that has to move on. Might edit a bit as well, but basically,
so you edit as you go.
Sometimes, I try not to do it because it's not the thing to be doing. You just want to be moving on. All that stuff, the commas, the paragraphs, that can be all cut up and done with later. So you don't want to hang up your story, just delay your story. So try not to. And this is why people who sometimes they're journalists, they're very caught up in that, and academics as well can be caught up in it because they're thinking this all along.
Yes.
It's just something that's in them. So if they can let go of that, I think, and get into free running with the story and the characters, because characters to me is story. And from the characters derives plot. Other writers tell you different. Some writers like to map out their story.
And you don't do that?
No.
You kind of let the character move forward. Would you see the end of a story before you begin? No. Sometimes I just jump in. Most times I jump in. Yeah. And if I don't see the end in 2 pages in, I have a problem. If I don't see a path. There are many, I suppose, writers tell you the same, that they are, they scraps of paper lying all over the place. Because you can hang a short story on a very good opening sentence and paragraph. Your story can be written, you can see it in those 4 or 5 lines. I know where this is going now. That happens with practice. You're looking for your voice inside, you kind of know after writing for a while this is not going to work. I've been 30, 40 pages into a novel and I've had to leave it there and say this is not working out. Now that's not to say I'm not going to get anything out of it. I can come back to maybe 2 or 3 years later and say, I was writing this from the wrong perspective. It doesn't really matter about her, what she thinks about it. This is the main character here. It affects him more than it does her. So why was I writing about this? So these are things that come back to you. Because when you're writing, it's just not sitting down at your desk. It's getting out for a walk. It's thinking. It's actually working at something else. And then you get this inspiration and you have to go with it. But that must be quite frustrating at that point when you come to 40 pages and you go, I have to pause now and just kind of, not scrap it as such, but kind of lay it to rest and start again. Is it?
It's like a car running out of petrol. It's very
you kind of run out of steam.
You run out of petrol, and you say you don't know where this is going, but you're not engaging with the characters. You say, you don't want your characters black and white, but you're just not engaging with them. For whatever reason, if you can pick that up, your reader's going to pick it up. If you're not coming across authentic and real, believable people, forget about it. You have to be honest with yourself. He had more of a likeness to his father's twin, Salar, who lived across the border in Iran, in Maravan village. Other than to complain about his late arrival, his brother had little to say. After spending 2 nights with the herd in the mountains, Memo was usually gruff and silent, anxious to be on his way. But Cocker had questions he needed to ask. Had he seen any wolves or wild dogs? Had any of the goats been taken? Had he come across any more corpses of deserters from the Iraqi army? Last month, Memo had stumbled upon the remains of 3 young men in a ravine. All of them had been shot in the back of the head. They'd been buried in shallow graves and pulled from them by either wolves or wild dogs. Out of begrudging respect for their souls and the bad luck it might bring if he had just left them there to rot, Memo brought a pickaxe to the ground. No dead runaways, no wolves. I haven't seen a wolf in years, Memo replied. Just a pack of starving dogs. Don't let them get too near. He fell silent and then added, There are no werewolves, Cocker. I know that. Why do you go on about werewolves? I don't. I said wolves. Memo smiled and put his finger to his nose, tapped there. I remember the nightmares you had after you saw a Wolfman movie. Cocker felt himself bristle. But what could he say? He had nightmares.